Hello everyone, if you're new to my channel, consider liking and subscribing. It will make me feel wonderful if you do that. Thanks. By the way, I also have another Naruto and Luffy fanfiction channel. If you are interested, link is in the description.
One Piece, Luffy's Friend by PizzaFan123. The anime One Piece started with Monkey D. Luffy's childhood friend, Grey D. Aki, being on his crew to start with him as a pirate. She will not be the strongest. That will never get hit. Adios.
Chapter 7. We were sailing and I looked at Zoro's chest nervously. What if he bleeds out? The only thing to do was to stitch it up, and I bet Johnny or Usopp don't know how to do it. I don't either, but I'm worried, I said. Zoro. He squinted at me and raised an eyebrow at my nervous tone, which I usually never have. Aki, what's wrong with you? I said. You're bleeding badly. He rolled his eyes and replied. You sure? I said. I could try to stitch it up or something. I'll be careful, he nodded and said. Okay, watch it or I swear. I grinned nervously and Johnny and Usopp looked at me. I turned serious and asked. Usopp, could you grab the back of my shirt in a sec? He looked confused. Why? I replied. I need to keep my hands clean, but the ocean is bad for me. He nodded when I leaned over the boat to put my hands in. I already felt the drain of power and slumped a little in weakness. Usopp's grip on my shirt reassured me though. I shook off my hands and got back fully on the boat. Usopp let go and I grabbed the first aid kit on the boat. It had a large roll of bandages and luckily a needle and thread. I put the thread in the hole and tied it tightly. I let my face go serious. I walked over to him until I was almost on top of him. I pushed the skin close and stared, stitching him. I felt him fingers twitch and I flinched. I said. Do you want something to numb the pain? He said. No, just do it. I nodded with a frown and stitched the large slice. I never counted how many stitched I used, but was happy when I finished. I wrapped his whole torso with the bandages I saw and it looked bad, the bandage. It was crooked and in wrong angles. He closed his eyes and went to sleep, or almost did. I laid near him and he mumbled. Thanks, Aki. I said back. No problem. I heard snores come from him and whipped the sweat on my face with a hand. I blinked and looked at my hand. Zoro's blood was all over and now it was on my face. I looked in the first aid kit and used extra bandage to clean my face and the best I could do with my hands. I never thought I'd do something like that before. It's kind of weird, but I hope I never have to do it again, Johnny said. Alright, we're here. Arlong Park is ahead. I looked behind me as Usopp said. Arlong Park. The fishman who's from the Grand Line. He looked freaked out. What was normal for Usopp, Johnny said. Big sis Nami's ship was the Going Merry, so it'd be safe we should quietly check to see if it's docked on this island first, Usopp agreed and I frowned. Why don't we just walk in and look for her? She knows us after all. Zoro stood us and I did as well. She's right, let's attack. They freaked out at us. Zoro looked ahead and said. While you two are busy wimping out, I worried about the battle I have to face. Luffy told us to bring her back and that's just what I'm going to do, I nodded. Yeah, planning does not go the way you want it anyway. I faced the way Zoro was looking. Since we didn't stay and fight, or I didn't, at least I figured this would be fun, I said. Yeah, plus kicking a few fishman asses could be fun. They explained who this Along guy was and I wondered how actual fishermen looked. While they yelled about my recklessness, Zoro said. Let's go. Suddenly, I felt a hard hit to my head and blacked out, falling to the floor. I woke with a pissed off Zoro tied next to me. I squirmed and growled. My hands were tucked under me. It must have been Usopp's idea. He knows about my clays. Speaking of him, I yelled. Hey, what's the big idea? Zoro also yelled. Will you idiots untie me? I'm not the enemy, Johnny said. Wickle. I squirmed a lot more. We're east of Kokoyashi village. Why would she stop so far from the village? I looked at Zoro to see if he was getting close to getting away, but saw vein bulging in his face. He yelled. Untie me, damn it, Usopp said with a grin. Zoro, you way too bad to be of help when we go ashore. He put a hand on his chest. He grimaced in pain and put his head back. I growled and flashed my teeth at Usopp. He backed up a little. I yelled. Hey, get off his chest. I just did those stitches and I don't know how good they're. Usopp started talking about nonsense. I informed it, I said. We gotta get out of here, that Johnny guy is weak, he sighed. I know, I said. They're going to get it when we get out of this, he nodded and said. Agreed. Usopp then ran over here freaked out and Johnny asked. What is it? What did you see? They freaked out and said. Fishmen, Zoro yelled. Why didn't we dock right there? Usopp shushed him and said. Did you see that? There were 3 fishmen over there, that's Arlong's crew. We can't stop right now. Zoro kicked him in the face and I smirked. Untie me already. They tried to lie about Nami and I growled. No, we need to find her, no running away, Luffy said. That and I feel I should still protect her. They swam away with me and Zoro still tied up. My eyes widened. I can't fight like this. Zoro was screaming at them as I wiggled around. 2 fishermen jumped on the boat and they said. There is just one guy and a girl. Wow, really? They notice I'm a girl, but not Sanji. I find that insulting, Zoro said. Yeah. Right, the guy on the left said. Maybe somebody wanted them to die real slowly. I pouted and the other guy said. I think we should take them to Arlong. What? Maybe Nami will be there. They decided to ignore us and sail the ship somewhere, but I could not see a thing. I had the one with the thing sticking out of his head say. Open up. We have prisoners on board. I heard creaking and guessed the gates opened. I muttered to Zoro. Any ideas on getting loose? He shrugged and said. Just go with the flow, I sighed. I was bored. They untied us just as we finished talked but kept our hands behind our backs with rope. We were next to each other, sitting down at the 2 mermen's feet. This guy with a crooked nose was in front of us talking. One more time, what was the purpose of coming to this island? Zoro said in a pissed-off tone of voice. For the last time, I'm looking for a girl. You half-fish bastard. I smirked and looked up at the guy. He had an ugly grin on his face. He said. Wow, for someone I consider a good meal, you are either really stupid or you got a lot of guts in there. We fishmen are simply better than you. We can breathe both on land and underwater, an ability which establishes our physical superiority over you. I don't know if this will make any sense to the puny brains rolling around in your head, but fishmen are the lords of all creatures. Going against us is to defy nature. I frowned. At least we ain't ugly. I heard Zoro sigh from next to me and Jagged Nose Guy said. You girl, are stupid or gutsy like your friend, something that is dangerous against superior creatures like us. I heard a familiar voice say. I'm really sick of listening to your big ideas Arlong. I looked and saw Nami. Oh, so this guy is Arlong. Arlong said. Why are you so serious Nami? I wasn't talking about you. You're a very special human, a very good navigator and a valued member of this crew. You always have been. My eyes widened in shock. That can't be true. I stopped looking up and studied my feet. Nami was talking, but my brain was numb again. I can't take all this betrayal. The blood was pounding in my ears and I wanted to knock some sense into Nami. I heard Zoro say, why did he call you his navigator Nami? You can't honestly expect me to believe you work for him? I wanted to hear her answer too. Arlong asked. Is this guy a friend of yours, the girl too? I tensed at that. Nami said. Don't be ridiculous, these people are just fools who thought I wasn't gonna steal treasure right under their nose. To think they followed me here without knowing that. Shows how stupid they are. I flinched back a little on hunched shoulders. Every word, they heard a deep burn in my chest, but I showed no weakness toward anyone, Zoro said. So this is the person you really are. All along I thought you couldn't stand pirates. Nami said, it was all an act and you both bought the whole show. I heard shock in Zoro's voice and looked up with suddenly tired eyes. The mark, his crew that I see around, she was not lying. It hurt more than before, me knowing it might be a trick and she could help us somehow. I looked at the ground and glared at it, growling a little when I heard Nami laugh, a harsh one. Not like when we hung around and she laughed at something funny we did. Back when we were nakama. Yes, even though we were considered not crewmates because she didn't accept Luffy's offer, we still were in our minds and now I just don't know, Nami said. You guys are just a bunch of suckers. Arlong was laughing and I gritted my teeth in anger, he said. She had you guys completely fooled. It's no use. She's cold-blooded. She betrayed her family for money so you really shouldn't feel too bad. My eyes widened. I can't believe it, Nami would never. I don't know what to think anymore. Arlong kept on going and I pulled at the restraints on my wrists. He was getting annoying, Zoro said in a smug tone. I never saw anything to be trusted in the first place. If she turned out to be a serial killer, I wouldn't be surprised. I looked up and decided to stop being a baby about this. She face looked a little shocked at this, she said. Why don't you just get the hell out of here? I'm tired of your face. They seemed to forget I was here, I said. And what if we don't want to? Her eyes snapped to mine and she narrowed her eyes with a frown. Well, I don't care. I'm sick of you the most. My eyes widened, before I made it go blank. Zoro let out a chuckle and I felt myself being collided with someone and I flew back. I landed into water and felt myself get tired as the currents pushed me down. I felt Zoro's hand on my wrist. I suddenly felt air and draped over a ledge. I was panting, the water tiring me out. I turned my head and saw Zoro next to me and Nami on his other side. She saved us. I had a small smile. I knew it. Something must be going on, Nami said in a whisper. What do you think you're doing? Plus Aki can't swim, Zoro said. No, what do you think you're doing? He gave her a grin. You're just a really nice girl who can't watch people die. Why don't you stop pretending? She pulled him up on the concrete and he was lying on his back. I tried squirming up, but the ropes and water was making it hard, Nami hissed. Stop that. She then decided to pull me up my hair on top of my head and the scruff of it until I was on my stomach after yelping in pain. Why do you grab me like that? She glared. You're a dog, aren't you? My eyes narrowed and I growled lowly deep in my throat like I use as a warning to enemies without realizing it. Zoro told her to be quicker and she kicked him in the stomach. I yelled. Watch it. She smashed her foot on my head and it hit the concrete. I grunted in pain. She pulled Zoro up and said. That's a lot of bandages. You got injured, Zoro said. No, I don't have a shirt, so I didn't want you to get distracted. She punched him this time and I got to my feet. I didn't know what to do. I can't attack her, I said with a growl. Nami, she looked at me and I stared back. I won't hit her, I'm way stronger, and it's not fair. She could see it in my eyes. I wouldn't either. She took her pull thing out and my eyes widened. She wouldn't. I took a step back and tried to give her a warning look. She slammed it in my stomach out of nowhere and I dropped to my knees. I heard Arlong ask as she put it away. What should we do with them? Nami said. Lock them up. I'll take care of him when I have the time. I heard a fishman come in and say. Arlong, they're not alone. There was a long-nosed guy with them. My head snapped to look at him. Usopp, I heard the guy say. I think he escaped to Kokoyashi village. Where's that? Some fishman dragged us off down somewhere as Arlong left. I was trashing. I got to get to Usopp, Zoro hissed. Aki, calm down. I took a deep breath and glared in front of me. We were at a cell and then pushed in. Zoro regained his balance, but I was still tired from the water and fell on my shoulder. I gave a grunt and scooted against the wall next to Zoro. I sighed and leaned against the wall and fell asleep. I opened my eyes when I heard the creaking of the door. It was Nami. I smiled at her, but she ignored it and silently untied me and Zoro. She walked toward the door, she said. Get out of here quick. Arlong gonna be back soon. She walked away and I said. Thanks Nami. She froze, but kept walking. Zoro's sword appeared in front of us and I stood up. I gave Zoro my hand and he grabbed it, pulling himself up. I asked. How's your chest? He shrugged. Okay. I rolled my eyes, but decided to let it be. We ran out and back to where we were before. There were 6 fishmen. I grinned when they saw us, I said. We each get 3. He nodded and I made my 6-inch nails, but only on one hand. He started at 3 and I ducked as one punched at my face and put power in my foot and kicked one in the face. He flew and smashed his face onto the concrete. The other 2 ran at me and I jumped up in a flip and they smashed into each other and I used my nails to stick my fingers into one of their eyes and roundhouse kicked the other head. They both stumbled and I knocked them to the ground. I saw Zoro was finished too and all 6 of them were out like a light on the ground. He had on one of their shirts, a blue one open. He was resting in Arlong's chair with his hands behind his head. I walked over to him and sat on one of the chair rests. I chuckled. Well, that was a great warm-up, Zoro said. Yeah, but we still have to stay. I nodded with a grin and said. Yeah, Luffy said we need her, so we'll do it, Zoro chuckled. Speaking of him, I wonder where he is, I shrugged. Who knows, it's Luffy. I decided to relax like Zoro. I wonder when Luffy will come. I fell asleep leaning against the back of the chair. I felt Zoro bump me. "What do you think is taking so long?" I said. "I don't know. Luffy must have beaten the guy by now," he groaned. "Well, I'm bored," I nodded, but I didn't say anything. I heard. "What are you, some kind of super fish? Not even the mighty Hatchin can pull you from the ocean. I don't know who you are, but you are the gutsiest fish in the East Blue." Something was getting pulled up and it was big and had stripes. I squinted my eyes to try to see what it was. It was me all along. The guy thing that was talking fell back and he started climbing. I looked at Zoro and he just shushed me. He looked at us. "That's strange," Zoro replied. "It sure is," the thing shouted back. "Who the hell are you two?" "Well, I'm Hatchin, but my friends call me Hachi," Zoro asked. "Are you a fish man too?" I muttered. "Is it obvious?" He ignored me though, he said. Of course. I'm an amazing octopus fish man. It looks to me like you're humans," Zoro said. "Yeah," Hachi said. "Marines are guests," I said. Guest. "Yeah, that's it," Hachi said. "Arlong isn't here, is he?" Zoro said. "No, I thought you might know where he is," he said back. "Apparently there's some long-nosed guy causing trouble. So he locked down his friends and went down to Kokoyashi village to get that pesky villager." I bit my lip. "I hope Usopp is okay." I and Zoro jumped down as he asked the fish man how to get to Kokoyashi village. He then told us to hop in his floating bucket. With a shrug and a large grin, I jumped in and made room for Zoro. He rolled his eyes, but got in. He got in too and pulled us. I grinned. We were going fast and my hair moved in the wind. Soon enough, we got to our stop though. Me and Zoro got off. Hachi left and Zoro chuckled. "That was strange," I shook my head. "You're telling me?" Zoro ran into the village and even though I knew Zoro's sense of direction sucked, I followed him. There was a place when a bunch of people where and I them say. "Yeah, a long-nosed boy helped us." My eyes widened hopefully and Zoro gave me a quick glance and ran to the guy that said it. The guy. "What are you talking about?" The people looked shocked and I looked at them with a frown as I walked up to them. "We need to know where our friend is," he said weakly. "Yeah, they took him to Arlong Park a while ago." My eyes widened. "Zoro, we have to go back," he nodded and said. "This is bad." He clutched his fist and I wondered how mad they were. "We beat up his crew after all. I don't know if he cares about them or not. Kuro and Buggy didn't." Zoro ran off and I shouted slightly in surprise before easily catching up with him. We ran down the road and took a turn into the forest. I was easily running beside Zoro. I decided talking wouldn't matter, so I didn't. I stopped short and Zoro did too. I looked around with hunched shoulders. I heard something slightly far away. I let my eyes look around all over the place. Zoro asked. "What's wrong, Aki?" I frowned. "My hearing is better than human. I can hear something." He nodded and looked around. The ground was shaking and I heard Luffy. "I looked to see a boat," I said. "Zoro." We saw the boat coming fast and before we could move, the boat hit us and I yelped sharply as we hit something hard. I groaned in pain. I saw Zoro rise up and I did it after. He yelled. "What the hell were you doing?" I nodded, glaring. I saw Luffy and Sanji. I grinned and wiggled out of the rubble and jumped at Luffy with a grin. I said. "Hey Luff, you're back. You won good, right?" I was hugging him hard and he hugged me with the same strength as he said. "Yup, I got Sanji to join us." I let go and I looked at the blank faces of Sanji and Zoro. I chuckled and Sanji asked. "Do all the guys hug like that?" I smirked when Luffy said. "Aki's a girl." Sanji gawked at me and Zoro snorted. He came to me and held my hand. "Aki-san, I'm so sorry for misplacing you for a boy. You are a beautiful gem and it is a pleasure to meet you." I looked at him with a jaw dropped and then I blushed, badly. I snatched my hand away and looked away. "It's okay. Treat me normal, okay?" Luffy was laughing and Zoro was coughing. Luffy said. "Your face looks like a tomato, Aki." Sanji yelled at him. Luffy ignored him and said. "Where Usopp and Johnny?" Zoro jumped up and I remembered. "Luffy, we have to go now." "I forgot," Luffy asked me. "Why? What's wrong?" Zoro said. "That dumbass has been caught by Arlong. We got to hurry before they kill him." I nodded quickly and heard a depressed voice say. "He's already dead. We're too late. Big bro Usopp is dead. Nami murdered him." I look at him with shock and the anger. I clenched my hands into fist and put them at my sides. No, I would know, and Nami saved me and Zoro. I kept my head down. I heard Johnny say. It's true, Nami was a traitor all along. She's been winning Arlong's favor so she can get the treasure buried in Kokoyashi village to herself. That woman is a cold-blooded killer. She won't stop until she gets what she wants. Nami had us fooled the entire. Luffy grabbed Johnny and stopped him from speaking and his hat flew off. I walked over as Luffy screamed at him and I bent down to pick up Luffy's hat and held onto it. It wouldn't be good if someone stepped on it. I backed up a couple of steps with a scowl. Johnny is lying. Nami would never do that and Luffy has a right to be angry, Zoro said. Easy Luffy, this has nothing to do with Johnny, Johnny said. I know what I saw. Nami killed Big Bro Usopp. Luffy was screaming at him again and I just watched silently. Zoro's pav Zoro watched this over was annoyance. That damned witch causing all those problems. He didn't know for sure if Nami killed the long-nosed kid or not. Luffy sure didn't believe so and he was the captain after all. He looked at everyone's reactions. Johnny and Yosaku were upset, but then again to him they were always dramatic all the time. Sanji was just weird. He was tired of it. Luffy was pissed and Aki surprised him. He found her to be very loyal and he could respect that. No matter what Nami did to her, Aki still stood by her, which he found foolish too. He could also see how her loyalty could be dangerous for her. She didn't shout as she watched Luffy scream at his longtime partner, but watched the scene silently. She had Luffy's treasured hat in her hands. Just by watching this he could tell she was pained. But he too watched. Zoro noticed a movement and frowned when he saw the cause of the shouting. Zoro sighed, this couldn't be good. Aki's pav, what did you say about friends now? I frowned at Nami. She better not hurt Luffy. Mentally of course, she could never hurt us otherwise. Luffy dropped Johnny and said. Nami said. What are you doing here? Luffy said. You're our friend, we came to get you. I walked over to Luffy and put his hat on his head quietly. He looked at me and I ignored it, Nami said. You a pest. Friends huh? Don't make me laugh. You pathetic enough to deserve each other? I scowled and stared at her, but said nothing unlike Johnny who shouted. Damn you, you killed him, now Big Bro Usopp is gone, Nami smirked. Yep, why don't you kill me and get your revenge? Nami continued. Word to the wise, because of your friend Arlong is going to kill Zoro and a random girl. Along with their crew. She shot a distasteful look at me. I didn't react. She then started talking about us not being strong enough, but I ignored it. Nami finished off. If you stay on this island, you will die, like I'd leave, Sanji said. Her heartless face is so hot. Hi Nami. It's me Sanji. Let's run away together. Zoro got in his face. Can it Romeo, this isn't the time or place for that. He went from happy to annoyed. Excuse me. Love is like a hurricane, so back off, I sighed. This is not helping, Zoro said. Nami, where is Usopp? Nami said. With the fishes, Zoro snapped and I was holding myself back. Zoro and Sanji were yelling at each other, Nami said. Leave, you guys have no right to be into this island's affairs. Don't you get it? The only reason I got close to you guys was to rob you of everything you have. But now you're broke and the dream's dead. So go and take your ship. So leave and find the One Piece or whatever, I snapped. It doesn't matter Nami, Usopp is not dead. I felt stares on my back along with Nami's on my face. She glared with a dark look in her eyes. Why can't you grow up and accept he's dead you idiot? I swear you act like a 10-year-old kid that can't get their way. Stop acting like a spoiled brat. I froze and my eyes widened. I heard Zoro yell something and Sanji yell at him. I had my head down and didn't say anything. Luffy was quiet and I heard the bounty hunters seethe. I heard a crash and Luffy say, Sleepy. They started yelling at him, but I heard light snores and chuckled despite the problem. Only Luffy, Nami yelled. Whatever, just go ahead and die. Before she could run off, I said quietly. Nami. Remember what I said in Usopp's home village? I meant every word. Remember that? She almost tripped, but then ran away. I shook my head, moved to where Luffy was and sat down. I lay next to Luffy and said. Since Luffy's not leaving, I'm not either. I think I'll sleep too. Putting my arms behind my head, I fell asleep. I was 5 years old then and my life was great. I was innocent and I lived in a different place than Dawn Island in Fuchsia Village. I had a mother and father and I was happy. All I knew then was that they used to be pirates on the same crew and then hate me. We were in a remote place and that was the reason I later found out I knew them longer than I did. My father was a fisherman down by the docks and my mother usually stayed home with me or went to the village and told me to stay home and don't leave unless mama or papa came by. Then one day when the whole family was home eating dinner, salmon and rice, a bang came from where the front door was and I looked to see a bunch of Marines running in. I gasped in shock and fell off my chair and scooted to the corner with my hands over my head, the only protection I knew. My parents jumped off their chairs and started fighting quickly. Then white clothing with some cape coat on their shoulders came in and saw me. I gasped and remembered trembling. My mother jumped in front of me and before my father could get her or my mother could defend myself, the man I knew later as an admiral stabbed my mother in the stomach with a sword so far in the tip just touched my stomach. I remembered, gasped and yelling out, "Mama, no!" She smiled at me and I had all her blood on me. She dropped next to me and my father had the most outraged expression on his face. I cowered at the look, even if it was not toward me as he started killing Marines left and right. All the Marines cornered him and another Marine with a red suit with weird prints on it and a white cape with gold things on the sides killed him and all the Marines thrust about 5 swords in him. I cried out in shock and ran from the house. I woke up with a jerk and was breathing heavy. The others didn't seem to notice and I was happy for it. Luffy was still sleeping. I looked around and noticed Johnny and Yosaku were not here. I asked Zoro who was sighting. "What happened to your friends?" He gave a shrug and said, "They decided to leave." I nodded and saw Sanji also sighting, but smoking. I figured he does that a lot. Not that I care. We all sat in the silence as Luffy snored. Sanji asked Zoro, "Hey, what do you think it is?" "Why was she crying?" Zoro said. "I don't know, was she crying?" Sanji looked at me and I frowned. "What was he talking about?" he said. "She was, in her heart," Zoro snorted and said. "If there were, it was guilt for killing Usopp." I scowled and glared at Zoro. "He's not dead." He gave me a, "What, look," Sanji said. "Yeah right, are you serious? You really are dense?" I nodded. "Yeah, I can't believe she killed him. Remember what she did for us." Sanji was joyed about me agreeing with him and Zoro said, "Listen Aki, I know you really think Nami is good like Luffy does, but you can't think she pure, can you?" I sighed. "No, but Nami will pull through." Sanji went back to what he was saying. "Do you honestly believe Nami could kill Usopp?" Zoro asked after a pause. "So what you're both saying is Nami didn't kill him?" I nodded and Sanji said. "Am I wrong?" Zoro chuckled. "Who knows, I always though Nami a small time who couldn't watch a guy die, let alone kill him. But maybe she just snapped." Sanji got angry. "Wait, what did you say? She's not small time?" They both ran at each other and I groaned. "Really, at a time like this? Before they could meet, they hit someone in the face." I walked over to see if they were okay and I grinned. It was Usopp when I knew Nami never killed him. His eyes were squinted and before he could get up, I tackled him to the floor with a hug. I said, "Hey Usopp, you're alive." I guess I was using my extra strength because he wheezed out. "Can't breathe." I let go and grinned. Luffy woke and was shaking him and yelling. Sanji grinned at him. "I'm here too." Usopp jumped up in his face. "One of these days I'll kill you." I grinned happy he was here. He said, "Oh, you just made a full recovery," Zoro said. "By the way, we kind of heard you were dead by Nami," Luffy said angrily. "Stupid Johnny, he was sprouting nonsense that entire time," Usopp said when I started to get angry to think Johnny was lying. "In a way, it is the truth. The truth is she saved me, so he told us how she stabbed her hand to make it look like she killed him so he could get away." I grinned. "I knew it," Usopp nodded. "It seems like she had a motive to be with those fishmen." We were talking about what to do when we heard a voice behind us. "It doesn't matter what you do, Arlong Park's rule won't come to an end." I turned around to see a girl with short blue hair and tattoos. Usopp said. "Nijiko?" Luffy asked while I tilted my head to the side. "Who's she?" USPP answered. "Nami's big sister." Sanji started doing that creepy eye thing so I stepped closer to Luffy. Zoro said. "What do you mean it's no use?" Nijiko said. Just trust me, don't get yourselves involved. What's going on here? Leave poor Nami alone. I'll explain the situation, Sanji questioned. Situation? Usopp said. You mean to tell us why she joined Arlong's group? I rolled my eyes. Why would we care what her past is? She Nami and our friend. That's all there is to it, and I know Luffy agrees with me, Nezuko said. Yeah, and if that doesn't get you to leave, I don't know what will, Usopp said. So then tell you all about it. I got to admit I'm curious, Luffy said. I'll pass, Usopp said. Hey wait, Luffy said. I don't care about her past, I said. Me neither, because it don't matter to me about anyone pasts. I walked next to Luffy. Sanji asked. Where are you both going? Luffy said. For a walk, Usopp yelled. Do you mean you both are not going to listen to any of this? Me and Luffy both replied. Nope, we continued to walk down the road. Me and Luffy were walking for a while and I asked him. So do you know where you want to go? He shrugged. Nah, just walking. I nodded and kept pace with him. I smelled something weird and looked up to see 3 fish men in front of us. I put my goggles over my eyes when I recognized Hachi. 2 others guys that were blue and weird looking were on his sides, Luffy said. Wow, they must be fishmen. We walked past them and Hachi shouted. Hey you two there, wait, Luffy turned around. Hachi yelled. Who are you two and what are you doing on this island? Luffy asked. What does it matter to you? Hachi said. Well, it just that we don't get many visitors, I wonder why, Luffy said. Well, my name is Luffy and this is Aki. We're just passing through, Hachi asked shocked. Huh, passing through? We'll have a nice time? Luffy turned around and we started walking again. One of them said. Hey smartass, where are you both going? Luffy said. Heck if I know, I said to him. That was weird, he nodded. Yeah, we walked for a while and ended up in the villager where people were, I frowned. These must be the villagers, he nodded, and I saw a guy with scars and a pinwheel hat walk forward. A bunch of marines were behind him and the front one looked like a mouse. He made me growl. The aura of his angered me. Luffy was shocked. Luffy muttered. A hat pinwheel? Where in the world did he get that? I stayed quiet, realizing he was talking to himself. It's so cool, I chuckled. Luffy decided to lean against a tree, so I sat beside him. We just sat there and I was getting bored. I looked at the sky and stared at the clouds. The shapes were a dog, bird, mouse and so on. I even saw a ship that looked a little like the Going Merry. I heard a shout. Doctor, doctor, I looked to see a crowd and noticed Nami. They were panicked and I frowned wondering what happened, the pinwheel guy said. Nezuko been shot. My eyes widened. Nami's sister got hurt? One of the crowd asked. By who? Pinwheel said. The Marines, another guy echoed him. I heard slight whimpers and saw blue on the ground. I frowned deeper. I hope she's okay. I know the only reason she was rude was because she must be worried about Nami. I know what it feels like to worry about your siblings, Ace and Luffy being the example. I blinked shocked when Luffy ran up to her and I sighed before following him, he said. Hey Nami. What's up? Need help? She slowly turned around. She yelled. Why are you still here? Stay out of my business. She grabbed him by the front of his vest and brought him close to her. I tensed. Just get away from our island, she threw him on the ground. I frowned and just stared at her as seriously as I could. She glared at me hatefully and ran off. I looked down at Luffy and said. Luffy, get up. He did and we went back to our tree. He pouted and said. What's her problem? I said. Her sister got hurt, like if I would have got shot or you stabbed. He nodded and grinned at me. Like I'd let that happen, rolling my eyes. I sighed and closed my eyes. We saw the villagers get ready to go into Arlong Park. Nami tried to stop them, but they were bent on going. They left and Nami face screamed. Arlong, Arlong, Arlong. I jumped up because of how shrill the yell was and also because she was stabbing herself deeply in the arm and Luffy stopped her. I was silently behind him, frowning at how deep it was. She looked at us and our eyes were hidden in shadows, she said. Luffy, what do you want? You don't know anything about this. You don't know what's happening on this island for the past 8 years, Luffy replied. Nope, we don't. I was a little surprised to be included in it. She was shaking, she said. This has nothing to do with you. Any of you, I guess I'm being included in this by both go them. I knew she was good. My loyalty is never wrong, she went on. I told you to leave this place, Luffy said. Yep, you sure did. She threw dirt at us and screamed at us. We didn't do a thing. She sobbed as we stood there. That Arlong has pissed me off, she finally said. Luffy, help me. Luffy took off his hat and put it on Nami's head. I smiled at little. Not like I didn't know before, but Luffy has put his full trust in her by putting that hat on her head, Luffy said. Of course, that's what friends are for. He walked off and yelled at the top of his lungs. He's gonna pay, I said. Luffy, I'll meet you at Arlong Park. He just nodded and walked forward. Usopp, Zoro and Usopp were there. They left and I sat crisscross next to Nami. She was not looking at me and I said softly. Nami, I meant what I said. I'm going to fight with Luffy and for you. I'll talk to you later and know this. My loyalty is always right. I know I was right for trusting you no matter what you say. Because when it comes down to it, you're Nakama. I slowly took my goggles off my head and stared at them. She made a choked sound and I was happy I was getting to her. I spoke again. Luffy gave you his hat to hold. It's very important to him, as much as these are to me. You saw that the first time we met. I placed them in her hands and she looked up with a gasp. I grinned and stood up with a grin. Take care of those for me, okay? I'm going to kick some fishman ass. I think you should get your arm checked out. I winked at her and walked toward the direction of Arlong Park. Soon enough I saw Luffy and the crew in front of me, a little and a large crowd in front of them. I ran to them and clapped Luffy on the shoulder. I'm back. He looked at my forehead a little longer and had a look in his eyes. I walked with them, ready to protect our Nakama. I adapted my most serious face as I walked forward to Arlong Park and noticed the people gaping at us. Luffy said. Step aside. I heard that bastard Arlong laughter as we walked along. I know I wanted to get my hands on him, but knew he was Luffy's, simple as that. I noticed Johnny and Yosaku by the door and they were beat up. I scowled with a slight growl. I count them as a friend and they hurt them, they had to pay. Luffy went forward and broke the doors down in a couple of punches. He held up a fist and said, Now which one of you is Arlong? I growled low in my throat and glared at the man that I knew was Arlong. That jagged nose freak, Arlong said. That would be my name. Luffy stomped forward and said. Good, you can call me Luffy. I walked behind him with the same amount of anger. Arlong asked. Luffy? What are you supposed to be? Hachi pointed at us, saying he's seen us before. Two fishmen got in his face and he slammed their heads together and I watched with a satisfied smirk. Luffy then held his arm back and punched Arlong. He fell back and crashed into a wall which created smoke. I looked around at the other fishman and decided who I would have to fight when it was my turn. I heard Arlong mutter. Who the hell are you? I smirked and glared at the same time. We'll show him that he being a fishman does not matter, Luffy said. That's for making our navigator cry. I glared even more. All these other fishmen went to attack him and I kicked two in the face and punched one in the neck. They all went down and saw Sanji beat up some too. Sanji said. You just had to run in by yourself and dragging sweet Aki-chan with you. I ignored what he said and Luffy said. I can handle these bozos on my own and Aki fine, Sanji said. You fool, I never said anything about being worried. I just don't want you hogging all the action. I was ignored and Usopp came and said. Well, I just want to let you guys know that I don't mind if you hog it all, I heard Zoro say. I see you're ready to go as usual, Hachi pointed at Zoro. It's him, the unknown swordsman I was telling you about. He looked around and pointed at me. Ah, and his friend, I groaned. Really, can I be known as something else? Usopp screamed at me and Sanji yelled at him. They stared at Usopp in shock and talking about Nami killing him. I snorted, it don't matter. We are going to kick their asses, Arlong said. A pirate? This is all starting to make sense now. You had been after Nami this whole time. He started laughing like a crazy person. She's mine and I'm not giving her up. He continued to laugh as my shoulder went up to my ears in my anger as my hands shook. Hachi said. A bunch of idiots like you aren't worth Arlong's time. I know how to deal with you. He suddenly started making a trumpet noise with his mouth. I cocked my head to the side, confused. What is he doing? The place then started shaking and Usopp was screaming. I braced myself for whatever was coming. Hachi yelled. Mumu. Rise. The water created a whirlpool and I narrowed my eyes. Water was falling a lot and then I saw a sea cow with a bump on its head and it was crying. I grinned and exclaimed. Cool, look Luffy, it's a swimming cow. He laughed at me and Usopp screamed at me. Can you at least try to be normal? I shrugged. He looked at Sanji and Luffy and got scared for some reason, Luffy said. Look, he's back. I frowned in confusion. Yeah, he tried to eat my food so I beat him up, I nodded. It makes sense. He turned away and Hachi screamed at him, Arlong said. Leaving now, isn't that a shame? But I suppose if you really want to run away, who am I to stop you? Well then, he turned around looking pissed and I looked at it bored. Really? Luffy slammed his feet in the ground and wondered what he was doing, Zoro said. I got a bad feeling about this. I looked at him, wondering why. Luffy spun himself round and round until he was all twisted up. He then stretched his arms until he was holding the cow's horns. Zoro and Sanji ran off in panic, and even though I didn't really see a problem, I followed them just in case. He then unwound by spinning it around and round over and over again. My eyes widened and a grin appeared on my face, I exclaimed. That was awesome. Zoro yelled. No it wasn't, you idiot, Luffy shouted. Okay Arlong, enough of this. I came here not to fight your cronies, but to teach you a lesson. So step up. At least that gave me more to fight. Arlong laughed. I was thinking the same thing. Which just gives me more reason to end your life. Sanji started hitting him in the head with his foot and saying. That was the worst plan ever. I frowned. It looked good to me. He got rid of the cow and it looked cool. Usopp screamed at him too. I heard Luffy say. Uh-oh, I looked at him a little worried. What? Luffy was swaying back and forth and my eyes widened. He was stuck. I was about to say something when I heard Hachi say. How dare you hurt our brother? The other fishmen started saying they were better and Zoro snorted. I'd like to see that, the one with the weird lips said. Relax Arlong, we got this. If you go on one of your rampages, you could destroy Arlong Park. I rolled my eyes. Can we fight already? I ignored all talk and got ready to fight. To me it didn't matter. Luffy was trying to get their attention and I see what he wanted to say, so I tried to help him. Sanji and Zoro dodged out of the way. It hit me in the chest and I fell back a little and landed on my back. I groaned and sat up slowly till Luffy had it all over him, he yelled. Ah! I can't see squat, I got when I saw HBY Hachi with a large size of rubble. Before I could move, Sanji got there and kicked the rubble in half. I looked at him with amazement. That was cool. Luffy agreed with me. That was awesome, Sanji said. What a pain, I picked one hell of an idiot to be my captain, I heard Zoro say. We all did. Luffy's not that bad, he just funnier to be around, Sanji said. But our idiot captain is far better than someone who'd prey on a lady. Is that what he's made about? How about the village? The guy with his hair into pigtails and big things out of his arms said. A lady? You'd run into certain death for a simple girl? Sanji asked a little darkly. Simple girl? They started talking about that, but I got bored and looked around at the fishmen and how different they were. There was Hachi, the guy with weird lips, and some guy was bright green and was big with prickly things on the fingernails on his hands. It was weird and I wondered what he was supposed to be. Usopp tried pulling Luffy out, but all he did was stretch. I tried pulling him too, but he would not get unstuck. Usopp screamed. Are you even trying? I yelled back while digging my heels into the ground. Stop yelling, I hear Hachi saying something, but I ignored it and pulled harder. Usopp then let go and I gave a sharp yelp when I was flung with him and I smashed my head against his and we hit that weird-lipped fisherman. I run my head and glared at Usopp. Why'd you let go, idiot? He was crying, sorry. The weird-lipped guy was yelling at him and he ran off with him chasing him. Suidenlia's weird lips was talking to the villagers. He was suddenly on fire and fell to the ground. He got up and chased after Usopp. I think Usopp will be okay. It's weird. I thought these fishermen were supposed to be strong. They're weak. Look at what me, Zoro and Luffy did. We kicked their asses. I stood next to Luffy as Arlong got up and started talking about a fun game. I tilted my head to the side confused and waited. I moved a little when I saw Luffy punch Arlong, but he caught it easily, he said. Did you think you sad little group could beat us? Sanji said with a smirk. So what if we do? He grabbed the concrete and I jumped away on reflex and was next to Zoro on all fours. I straightened up and my eyes widened as Luffy was held up in the air by Arlong. I yelped. Hey, Put him down. He laughed and had a crazed look on his face. Did you know those with devil fruit powers can't swim? I gulped a little at this and stepped back. Anyone in this situation would sink right to the bottom. He laughed a laugh that annoyed me a lot. Luffy went to punch him and he did his hand. I could smell the blood. I winced as Luffy exclaimed, "Ow!" Luffy then went to bit him and I wondered if it would work for me. A wolf is way better than a fish, no matter what they say. He threw him in the water and I yelled in shock. "No, Luffy!" He splashed with the concrete still on him and Sanji and Zoro was shocked too. Arlong the bastard was still laughing. Sanji went to jump in and Zoro stopped him. Without realizing what I was doing, I was about to jump in. Zoro grabbed me and yelled, "Are you stupid? If you go in there you as bad as he is. That's where they want you to go," Zoro said. "It looks like we'll have to fight these guys. You get the fish," Sanji said. "Fine, you slice up the octopus." I frowned and looked around. The guy with the weird things that were spiky on his fingernails came up. I looked at him closer. While he had those weird things on him with his green body and had no hair. He was rounded and wore a purple shirt with bubbles overlapping and large shorts and was barefoot, he said. "I'll fight the little girl. Get her out of the way." I growled lowly in my throat, my warning growl I had. How dare he underestimate me? Arlong grinned widely at him with that same crazed look about him. I hunched my shoulders and glared at him. Zoro and Sanji got in their fights and I and that guy back off somewhere, giving us space, he sighed. "It very insulting, making me fight a girlie like you," I snarled. He squinted. "That didn't sound human at all," I grunted. "It's not, you're half of something and so am I," he smirked. "Whatever you say." I narrowed my eyes in anger, he said. "Prepare to die by my hand, me being Tetra. Your friend will underwater," I snared. "Shut up." I ran toward him sick of the talk and dodged an arm that had spikes on it by ducking down and spinning back around quickly. I was dodging his arms which had spikes on them and was getting pissed off at this. I just wanted to kick his ass. I jumped in and barreled. He was shocked as he was hurled to the ground. He was angry now and with a speed I didn't see, swiped my side with his arm and moved back. I yelped with the thorns in me. I pulled them out and hissed at the burning I felt. He laughed loudly. "My spikes are poisonous. You have 30 minutes to live. You friends will die and Nami will be ours for life." Enraged at my nakama being threatened, I punched him in the stomach and the spikes sunk in my hand. I roared in pain and hit his face. My hand was pushed off as he landed on his back. I took the spikes and knew his face would be the only part one knew wouldn't be infected by spikes. I felt stars in my eyes and blinked them away and shook my head. He stood up and looked shocked to see me standing. He smirked. "I was wrong. This will be fun." He ran at me and I dodged, but lost my foot and stumbled a little. I made my claws get longer. I faced him off, bending back a little and swiping at his face, which he dodged. I just kept on trying to hit him and I got his face. I got more spikes in my arms. I was getting even dizzier and I didn't know how much time I had left. But I needed to fight for Nami. I put my left arm behind me and my right in front. Letting out a yell, I ran at him. He puffed up and I braced myself. I roared. "Ah!" He thought I would back off if he saw this. I ignored the spikes on me as I shoved my right hand with the nails out and into his stomach. My legs were shaking in pain. He stabbed at my legs now and I was getting weaker. I smirked as I coughed up a large amount of blood. He asked, "How?" I took my arm out slowly and he yelled in pain. I then took my left hand that was behind me and I looked at him. He was also very bloody and his spikes were missing in a lot of places. The fire was growing inside of me. I used almost all of my strength and punched him in the face. He let out a little yell before flying somewhere. It might have been back to Kokoyashi village. I made my nails back to normal and stumbled and limped back to everyone else. I was breathing heavy and my vision was getting a black tint. I showed up to see that guy Hachi on the ground. I grinned. "Zoro did it." I frowned when I saw how badly off he was. One of the villagers said with a gasp. "Miss, you're hurt bad," I mumbled. "I'm fine." I walked past him and looked at Zoro and the fallen octopus. Zoro said, "Now that Tentacles is out of the way, I think it's time to rescue Luffy." My eyes widened in shock. I'm the worst sister ever. How could I forget about him in the water? Even if I had my own fight. All this got me more hurt. The black in my vision was more and blood was pounding in my ears. I heard yells in Sanji's voice, but couldn't hear what he was saying. Damn it, I can't go this way. Before I could say anything, I heard yelling, a splash, and my vision went blank and I passed out hitting the ground. Comma 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 comma. I was woken up and all I felt was white hot pain everywhere. I looked up to see an old man in a white coat with a red cross on him. He must be the doctor. I struggled to sit up, but did after sweating a lot. He said, "Don't move. You were poisoned. It will spread if you move too much. I slowed down the poison for now and you will have longer to live." I nodded and started around me with narrowed and worried eyes. I was breathing heavy just from doing this. I stood up with Shaki round. I got Luffy's scent, though it was weak, and stumbled over to see his head and Nijiko. My eyes widened as I fell to my knees. What happened to Luffy? I looked at his neck and saw it still in the water. I heard loud coughing and before Nijiko could answer me, I said, "Forget that. I'll be back." I hobbled over to see Sanji soaking wet and on land with Zoro crouched on the ground. I called out, "Sanji, Zoro. You okay?" They looked at me and Zoro's eyes widened a little. "Are you okay, Aki?" I nodded and clenched my teeth from pain. "Yeah, Sanji, what's going on with Luffy down there?" he said. "Half of him?" I blinked surprised as Zoro asked. "Half," Sanji said. "I'll explain later. It must be about Luffy's head," the weird finned guy said. "You will face the power of Fishman Karate. That punch earlier was just a sample of what's to come. The chances you'll survive it are 0. Punch. What punch?" Sanji kicked weird fins and he smashed to the ground. Sanji snapped. "You said my love was worthless." He was kicking him in the back and I winced. I could sense the power he was using. "I can't protect anyone." He kept on kicking him in the ribs and back. He fell back on the ground again. Sanji flipped in the air and he crashed somewhere in the building with the shark on the top of it. My eyes were wide, no matter my injuries. "That's so cool." I was sitting at this point and Arlong stood up. "Come on, where is Luffy? He can't die, not like this. After all, he is the man who will become Pirate King." I shook my head. What am I thinking? I had lived with him for 10 years. He will be fine, Arlong said. "You bastards, you killed my brothers on after the other. I'm afraid I have let you get too carried away." I got up seeing that look in his eyes. "You see, there are 3 kinds of people in this world: prey, predator and peace liver." He had that predator look in his eyes. I know I had to be on my guard. Thinking like this, I almost Zoro asked. "What do you mean about Luffy being half okay?" Sanji said. "It means he is alive for the time being. If we want him back on dry land, I have to get back in the water. But something tells me ugly over there won't let me." I nodded with a growl. I winced at the pain it gave me, but was happy no one noticed. He threw water at Zoro and he collapsed on the ground on his back. The same thing with Sanji. I dodged out of the way, but spit up a wad of blood. He laughed. "I see Tetra got you." I chuckled weakly and grunted. "I'm still here. What do you think happened to him then?" He growled angrily and threw water too fast for me to see. It hit me in the chest and with a sharp yelp, I crashed to the ground. It felt like an iron fist smashed against my ribs. I was on my stomach and whimpered once. My forehead was on the ground and I closed my eyes for a second. Arlong said, "You humans are so weak. I can kill you just by playing around with a little bit of water. That's the difference between you and me," Sanji yelled. "Shut up." He went to kick him, but he moved. He hit Sanji with water and he fell to the ground. I got up slowly. How dare he? Some protector I was. I can't even protect my nakama. Forget the pain. This bastard is not touching them anymore. I stood up and growled deep in my throat. "Hey, you fish bastard. "Don't you dare touch them," with my fingernails out. I rushed him. He threw more water at me, more than what he threw at Sanji. I fell on my back as a loud crack was heard. I screamed. I think I broke something. I heard Zoro yell. "Damn it, Aki." Sanji was hurt to say anything. I choked out after spitting more blood. "I'm fine," I coughed, which made my chest flare with pain. I stared to get dizzy and I knew the poison was acting up again. Arlong said. "You should all just die. No one will miss you when you're gone," I growled, but whimpered when it hurt my chest. I heard a shout. "Arlong, Nami. What's she doing here?" Arlong said. "Hey Nami, I was just teaching them one final lesson. These pathetic little pirates. What are you doing here?" I heard her say. "I'm here to kill you," I sighed and groaned. Arlong said. "Me? You want to kill me? Haven't you learned your lesson yet? How many times have you tried to kill me in these last 8 years? You tried assassination, poison, sneak attacks. You must be aware that you mere humans can't kill me. Now listen, I won't put you in the ground, Nami, but you can't leave. You will remain here with us, as our surveyor forever, but as you know I'm quite good-natured. If possible I'd like you to be our surveyor of your own free will. I'm giving you a choice. I will not pause to have my fishmen kill every living creature on this island. But that's only if you come back to the Arlong pirates and draw sea charts as one of our own. And if you come back with us, I'll be kind and spare the villagers their lives. But I can't." There I blacked out and could hear no more. I woke up when I heard yelling and it looked like much time didn't pass. I looked to see a big spout of water in the air. I grinned. "Luffy." Zoro was moving around and I winced at the pounding in my head. I sat up though. Zoro slowly stood up and I did too on shaking legs. I looked and saw Nami. I smirked. "Hello." She looked at me shocked. I turned back around to see Zoro put his sword in his mouth and say, 30 seconds, that's all I got, I said. "Count me in." Sanji jumped in the water and I shared a look with Zoro. He gave me the same one back. "Let's kick his ass." Zoro sliced in the check and while he was glaring at Zoro, I kicked his side. He fell back a little and turned to glare at me. I gave him a cheeky grin. "Hi fish bastard." I went over to Zoro and Arlong said. "Both of you, time to die." Arlong said. "One with devil powers can't even struggle. He will die. If he's still alive, that wouldn't be fair." I growled in response. Zoro said through his sword. "Yeah, this game hasn't been fair since the moment we started playing," I said through gritted teeth. "Yeah, the numbers were against us, but strength is better or something like that." Arlong glared at me. "You will die first." I raised my eyebrows as if saying, "Come and get me." Suddenly an egg was thrown at Arlong. I looked and grinned when I saw Usopp. "I knew he would be okay," Arlong asked. "You beat Chu, Usopp. It's time we finish this once and for all." "This is the end, Arlong." He went to throw something at him and I twitched. Usopp should let me and Zoro handle it. He went to hit his nose with his sword and it stopped it. I stared in shock as they fought nose to sword. I looked at the water in panic when I saw Hachi come back from being hurt and jumping in. We were stuck with Arlong. I stood to the side and suddenly fell to a knee. The poison was really getting to me. This might actually kill me. He then struck Zoro with his nose and yelped in shock. "Know his wound." I ran at Arlong in rage and he punched me in the ribs hard. With a barely held in scream, I fell on my back a foot or two away and another rib cracked. I groaned in pain as I looked up at the sky. I struggled to my feet and saw him rip off Zoro's bandages. I saw blood squirt and I paled. I fell to my knees. Ah, the pain. My whole body is burning. I can't take this. I looked over at Zoro and Arlong worriedly. Everyone was cheering and I looked around and roared in laughter when I saw the person. I grinned widely. "Luffy." He grabbed Zoro and threw him somewhere. I just laughed loudly. I moved away so Luffy can fight. He hit him with his head and then stretched his foot to knock him down, I said. "Luffy, I gotta rest. Kick his ass for me." He grinned and scowled then for a minute before grinning again. "Okay, Aki, just rest for me." I nodded and moved in front of the villagers, but sat down and just watched. He then punched him by stretching his arm back and punched him over and over using gum gatling. I grinned as I watched Luffy kick his ass and he was sent to the ground. He got up though and I could tell Luffy was ready to give more. Luffy was stretching and Arlong was grumbling a lot. Why does everyone person so much? It's annoying, Yosaku asked. Do you think Luffy will be okay? His attacks didn't even seem to affect Arlong? I rolled my eyes. That's stupid. Luffy will never be beat by that guy. I laughed at the conversation they were having. My eyes widened a little when I saw him going after like a shark. Arlong then grabbed Luffy by the throat and Luffy moved his head at the last second because Arlong bit the pillar. Luffy crawled away quickly while yelling. I'll even admit his teeth scare me. Arlong started running his mouth again and I ignored it. Luffy said after he finished. Fine, go ahead and try it. Because there is no way I'm losing to a fish man. I'm going to be king of the pirates. Arlong then started saying how he was better than us and Luffy said. Okay, but there's no way I'm going to lose to a big fish, since I am going to be king of the pirates. I laughed again and then winced. Damn it, this pain, Arlong said. King of the pirates? Don't be foolish. An inferior human like you could not conquer the Grand Line. You can't even crush a pillar without jaws, Luffy yelled. Yeah, so what? You're not that awesome. Besides smashing stones with your teeth is not that smart, Arlong yelled. That's not the point, I smirked and coughed. Sure it is, Arlong said. Every member of the human species is weak. How great are you if you can't pull yourself out of the water? Arlong went to bite Luffy and he dodged grabbing two swords. I blinked and shook my head. Luffy can't fight with a sword. What is he doing? He started swinging them around like crazy. I snorted and wondered what Zoro would think if he saw this. Arlong bit the sword Luffy struck at him and Luffy punched him in the cheek. I whooped when he went down and Arlong's teeth broke. Luffy yelled. You're right, I don't have a clue on how to use a sword, you bastard. I'm a terrible sailor. I can't cook, and I can't lie or protect people a certain way. But without my friends I would have been dead a long time ago. I smiled at what Luffy said. To me, I always follow Luffy as one of my reasons, Arlong said. I see you admit how pathetic you are. You may be a fool, but at least you are honest. How does your crew deal with it, day in and day out? Arlong got up. I growled, I'll show him how I feel, bastard. But it makes me wonder why they tried to save their half-witted leader. A guy like you does not deserve a ship or a crew. What good is a helpless rubber-brained captain to them? What can you possibly do? Luffy said. I can kick your ass, I smirked. Of course he can. If I was at better health I might be able to fight Arlong. They started cheering and I chuckled. He suddenly grew back his teeth and my eyes widened as I pointed and yelled out. Hey, that's cheating, you can't do that, Arlong said. I'm a shark. My teeth grow back one after the other. Each set becomes stronger. He pulled his teeth out and then did it again, but they grew back. I just looked at him in shock. He was attacking him with his teeth in his hands and I bit my lip worriedly. Somehow one of the fishmen got in the way and Luffy was safer. They said Luffy had come up with an idea. I paled and asked shocked. Luffy came up with an idea? Oh Cammy, this is bad. They asked me what I was talking about, but I just told them to watch. He dodged Arlong's attacks and kicked him in the face. His teeth fell out and he crashed to the ground. Luffy then put Arlong's teeth in his mouth. I felt a sweat drop on my head as I fell on my back in shock. I heard Nami mumble. Aki was right. I sat up again with a painful grimace. It bit him and he was rolling around yelling, a shark bit me. He was then dodging him again. He then got bit in the chest and was screaming. He bit Arlong on the neck and was thrown to the ground. Luffy went to block and he got bit on the elbow and his elbow was in his mouth. My eyes widened. Hey, he needs that. He grabbed Arlong and threw him in the ground, slamming him and forcing Arlong to let go. I let out a breath of relief and then took an intake of breath at the pain in my ribs. I think I have two broken or cracked. Arlong dived into the sea and before I could say anything Nami did. Luff the sea. I saw Arlong's fin peeking out of the water. Luffy called. Oh, look, a shark, Usopp shouted. No, it's Arlong. There was an explosion of water and Luffy went flying while a shape crashed into the building I don't know the name of. I'm going to call it Shark House. Luffy was gripping his stomach and Arlong showed himself. I ground my teeth, but didn't more at all. The burning was almost unbearable. He plowed into Luffy a couple of times and then went back into the water. Johnny and Yosaku were telling him to hide. I chuckled quietly and said lowly. He won't hide, that's how Luffy is, they should know that. They kept on yelling on him to hide and I snapped. "Shut up. Luffy won't hide and he won't lose to that guy, so shut your mouths and watch." He got silent and I glared in front of me. Luffy stretched his fingers in front of him. He grabbed Arlong and they were near the shark house. He was flung on top of the water and he made his fingers go everywhere and fling himself and Arlong out of the water. He then slammed him to the ground with his leg and a large dust cloud appeared. The people behind me cheered and I watched silently. I have a feeling, it's not over. I looked at Arlong's eyes and my whole body stiffened. A growl ripped from my throat until it became a snarl. I was on all fours before I realized it. Johnny asked. "Aki sis. What are you doing?" I said. "Those are the eyes of a real predator. Right now to them it's just predator and prey. That's all Arlong thinks right now." I just reacted on my animal instinct. Luffy is like a person of my pack if you will and I'm holding myself back. You all are my pack in my eyes? It was silent then my eyes narrowed and my teeth were bared as I stared at the hunt. Arlong then grabbed this big blade with ragged O the thing and it was huge. He went to hit Luffy, but he dodged. He went to hit him again, but it kept on crashing into the shark house. Luffy jumped into the window of the place. I yelled. "What the hell, I can't keep track of him there, Luffy?" I heard Nami gasp and I stood up slowly. I put an arm around her shoulder and saw she was wearing my goggles along with Luffy's hat. I looked ahead, not saying a word. It was taking a long time and I growled. "What is taking so long?" Nami muttered. "It'll be okay, Aki." I frowned, but said nothing. Soon, they were all yelling about Luffy and I said, "All you have quiet, I can't hear right." It was silent again. I'm cranky when I'm overprotective. A desk suddenly flew out and I frowned. A desk? Suddenly things started raining down and I heard a faint yell. "What are you doing?" It was Arlong. "That's a good question, what is doing?" I looked at Nami and got a look at her face. I asked quietly. "Nami, do you know what he is doing?" she whispered. My room, my eyes widened before a smile was on my face. "Attaboy Luffy," I muttered. "I see." I stared straight ahead with a blank face with my hands to my sides. I heard Nami started crying, she said. "Thank you." Paper was floating down also. The shark house was shaking and I knew what was happening and why it was. If Nami really suffered there, if Arlong killed her mother, the place needed to disappear. Right now Luffy is my only concern though. The thing broke apart and everyone was running. Nami was protesting. My eyes were wide. I yelled. "Nami, go." She looked at me shocked, but, I said. "I'll make sure he stays safe. Go." Everything was smashed. I roared at the top of my lungs. "Luffy." Before anyone could grab me, I bashed in the mess, ignoring Sanji, Usopp, Johnny, Yosaku and Nami calling my name. I looked in the rubble and stepped over a lot of it. I jumped back when I saw Luffy. I was about to run over, but stopped. Luffy screamed. "Nami, you'll always be my nakama." I grinned softly. "Yes, nakama." I heard Nami say. "Yeah." I dove myself at Luffy and hugged him tight. He hugged NGTH, I hissed. "God man, it's good to see you." He laughed. "Yeah." I let go and the villagers crowded around him. I snorted. "I'll go." He grinned at me and I was stuck in between them as they threw Luffy in the air while cheering his name. They dropped him and Nami came behind him and plopped his hat on his head. I walked over to them. Nami grinned at me after they high-fived. I was looking at Luffy when she put the strap on the back of my head and my goggles were around my forehead. I chuckled and I heard this really annoying laugh, like a mouse. I turned around, saw a mouse-looking guy and Marines behind his. I growled and tensed. "Damn, Marines got me when I was feeling good," Mouse Guy said. "Hold it right there." The villagers knew this guy and they didn't sound happy about it. What a day it is. I saw the entire fight and I must say good work. I had to say that your victory here was some sort of bizarre accident. I never thought the fishman would lose to such riffraff like you and your little crew. However, I will take all the money I was supposed to give to him in addition to all the money in Arlong Park. He suddenly screamed and went purple. I grinned widely as Zoro beat up all the Marines. I would have did it but now that the battle wore off, I'm getting real dizzy. Nami took her wooden pole and slammed it into his face and he went flying into the water. She was yelling at him and he snapped for a second. I growled lowly. You better back off, mouse, or Grey Diaki will royally kick your ass. He agreed to Nami's words and swam off really fast. I smirked. That was fun, dumb Marines. Luffy tricked Zoro and I roared in laughter. I looked over and saw Nejico and Genzo looking at us. I winked at Nejico and she smiled. I know how it feels to just be happy because your sibling is. All the injuries were getting to me and I just collapsed on the ground and everything went black. I woke up later on to screaming and I realized it was Zoro. I snapped my eyes open and saw Zoro getting fixed. I relaxed and didn't hurt anymore. I looked at the old man that was the doctor and asked. Thanks, Doc. I feel great, H nodded. You broke one rib and cracked the other. You'll be in pain for a week. So 3 days then. I heal fast. I waved goodbye to Zoro and saw Luffy. He was going to see Nami, I said. Hey, Luffy, I'm going to walk around, he grinned. There is a party, have fun, Aki. I grinned and ran out the place. I walked around and saw food all around. My stomach growled and I realized I haven't eaten since yesterday early. I went to a table and started eating like crazy. I ate for a while until I was stuffed. I patted my stomach and walked around. People were dancing all around. A couple of people were waving at me. I grinned and waved back. I saw Nejico and decided to sit by here, so I did. I said, "Hi, you been good?" She chuckled and said, "Yeah, thanks to you guys." I shrugged. It was for Nami and that fish guy was a bastard. I fo the one with needles, you know, she nodded. I think that was his first mate or something like that. My eyes widened. That's awesome. I'm so cool, she snorted and I heard a child's voice yell. Really? I nodded. Yeah, Luffy took care of the shark bastard and I did needles. I grinned before saying, "Do you want me to tell you about it?" His eyes seemed to get sparkles in them as I said. "Okay, but get comfortable." It was long. He sat down cross-legged in front of me. I heard Nejico snort. I cleared my throat dramatically and said, "Well, the needles called him Tetra, which is too girly for a guy if you ask me. He insulted me and Luffy, which is my brother by the way. I was angry. And he hit me in the side, but I got a good punch to the face on him. The hits were with his spikes and I punched him fair away, but I had those potion spikes on me. But I ran to battle to help my Nakama." His eyes shone and I felt pride well up in my chest. I bowed to both of them and said, "Well, bye. There are drinks to be drunk and food to be eaten." I dashed off with a wide grin hearing Nejico laughing behind me. It's been 2 days and I loved partying. I grabbed a mug of grog while walking and drank some. I grabbed another one and went back to the place where Zoro was. Zoro was done and leaning against the wall. I handed him his grog and he smirked at me. I sat next to him and sighed. I heard they are partying for 3 days. So Sanji came over and said, "Man, I'm stuffed. How are you feeling?" He gave me a wide smile and I winced. I'm not used to him being on me like that or any guy, I said. "Please Sanji, don't do that." He looked at Zoro. Zoro answered him. "I'm good. All I need is a little bit of rest," Sanji said. "That's good," Zoro asked. "Seriously, how much longer can they keep this up?" I shrugged. "I heard it was going to last for 3 days, so today should be the last day." He blinked at me, a little shocked, but nodded. "Luffy showed up with meat in his mouth," he said. "Hey Sanji, where is that meat you had? I want to give it a try," Zoro said. "You shouldn't talk with your mouth full," I chuckled. "I've tried for years, Zoro, it won't work." Sanji was telling Luffy he wouldn't find it. Luffy ran off and so did Sanji. But Sanji was dancing with girls. I snorted and shook my head. Zoro went to sleep and I yawned. A little tired too. I leaned against the wall and also fell asleep. I woke up and stretched. I yawned and stood up with half-lidded eyes. After a while of hanging around and even talking to a couple of villagers, we were ready to go. I helped Zoro bring crates and barrels to the ship. Finally after an hour we finished. I hopped around on the boat, restless. My ribs finally all healed. Yosaku and Johnny said goodbye and Sanji said, "Wait, where's Nami?" "We got to wait for Nami," Zoro said. "Maybe she's not coming," Sanji gaped at him. "Why? I swear if you hit on her again, I'll break your neck." "You got it?" Zoro asked. "Why would I do that?" I grinned and walked away from them. I leaned on the railing and looked at everyone. They waved at me and I waved back rapidly. I looked and squinted and I grinned. Nami, my crew behind me, looked over. She yelled, "Set the sails." They stared, doing all the preparations for leaving. I just watched Nami run to us. She made a really large jump and was in front of us. She lifted of her shirt and a lot of wallets landed on the deck. I just stared before roaring in laughter, holding my stomach because it hurt so much. Usopp said. "Great, she hasn't changed a bit," Zoro said. I'd watch my back. I just kept laughing and Luffy joined me. I stood next to Nami as we sailed away. Nami said as we stood alone. "Aki, I'm sorry for everything." I looked at her with a grin. "What are y'all saying that for? We're Nakama, right? I forgive you if that makes you feel better. I'm happy you did it. We never would have had you on and I kicked that guy's ass. Too bad you didn't see it. He went flying." She rolled her eyes and smacked me on the back of my head, but it was softer than normal. I said, "I never actually been in the women's quarters. Let's go." She giggled before following me. It had a desk and a couple of hammocks pinned to the wall. I fixed mine and laid on it with my hands behind my head. I sighed and said, "I'm going to pull a Zoro." She laughed at that. I basically hung around all day and I heard Nami and Usopp arguing about money. I did not want to get mixed up in that, so I stood by the railing and watched the sea. I loved doing this sometimes. I hated the dreams I was getting. My parents' deaths came up a lot. Soon, Luffy joined me by sitting on the rail next to me and I pulled myself up next to him. Luffy said, "I just want one tangerine. Just give it here. You're so mean." He stuck his tongue out and Sanji said, "No," Luffy said. "Oh, well. I'm pretty happy anyway." I slid off the rail and landed on the deck. I yelped when my ass struck the wood. Suddenly 2 flyers fell on the deck. I looked at them and I grinned so big all my teeth were visible. Everyone else, but Zoro, Luffy and I screamed. He picked up his poster and I was bouncing as I had mine. We had bounties. Mine was for 20 million and Luffy's was for 30 million. Was almost dancing. I said, "Hey Luffy. This is closer to my dream." He nodded and continued laughing. I said, "Yeah, and I'm only 10 million under that." "Whoa baby." They stared in shock and then Sanji started yelling about him not being in it. I looked at mine. My eyes were narrowed but I had a grin and my tongue was stuck out. It said Grey D Aki in bold, "dead or alive." They started saying, "Grand Line." I jumped around, danced with Luffy. I said, "Yeah, to the Grand Line." Luffy said it after me. Soon this ship came over and my mood was gone once I saw it was a marine ship, and worse, it was the marine I kicked. I scowled as Pinky started screaming. They were aiming at us and I narrowed my eyes. Zoro came by and sliced the cannonball in half. My eyes widened. "That's cool," Zoro smirked before saying, "You woke me up from my nap." Their cannon exploded and let's just said Luffy kicked his ass without even trying. All the marines that were on our ship got thrown off by Sanji and then Sanji freaked Pinky out. Pinky ran off and jumped into the water. I laughed. "Too bad I didn't get to hurt him." Nami called over. "Can you guys quiet down? I can't even rewad the paper." I snorted. Sanji said, "Nami, Aki, time for dinner." I cheered along with Luffy and we all ran in the kitchen. Digging into my plate of awesomeness, I was content. We had Nami and I had a bounty. One step closer to my dream. I can't wait for our adventures ahead. Somewhere away in the sea a man was sitting on an island rock with a scope on the lookout. He saw a ship on the sea, a small one. He said, "What's that?" The man next to him got up from leaning on the tree and came over to him. The guy said, "Let me see." He looked over and was shocked at what he saw. He ran down to shore and met the person on the boat that made him shocked in the first place. He pointed a sword at the man and asked panicky, "Why are you here?" This man had a black hat with a large plume, a red cape with a floral design in it, bare chest and light-colored pants with a large cross strapped to his back that was actually a sword. He was known as Dracul, Hawkeye's Mihawk, the greatest swordsman in the world. Mihawk said calmly, "Just calm down. Where is your leader?" "My business is with him." The guy who yelled ran off toward his leader. He took a drink that was in front of him when he showed up with a bunch of pirates hanging around. He pointed behind him. "Hawkeye." He jumped back when the same man he feared was right behind him. The man he was speaking to asked, "Hey there, Hawkeye. To what do I owe the pleasure? Have you come to fight me because I haven't been feeling so good at the moment? Mihawk said. Now that you lost your left arm, I have no intention of settling the score. I recently found out about two interesting pirates. It reminded me about a story you used to tell. A strange boy and girl from a small village. The man had red hair and a cape with black pants, and he was staring at the bounty posters of Monkey D. Luffy wanted for 30 million berries and Grey D. Aki wanted for 20 million. Both had wanted dead or alive on them. The man that had the red hair was called Red-Haired Shanks, pirate captain of the red-haired pirates. His shock was replaced by a grin. The men around him stirred at the familiar faces. Luffy, Aki. You both made it. Alright then, Hawkeye, in that case, I'm afraid I can't just let you just leave now. He placed a mug of grog on a stump. He said with a pink tint to his cheeks. Come on, Hawkeye, tilt her back. This is a celebration. Mihawk looked back at him. Weren't you hungover? Shanks answered. Ah, no way. Now drink, drink, and drink. That's it, soon enough. Mihawk was drinking grog. Shanks yelled. Everyone, let's get drunk, one random pirate said. But you said you were sick from drinking too much yesterday, Shanks said. Don't be stupid, I can't not drink on a day like today, Mihawk said. The sun is still up, Shanks laughed. Don't sweat it, time to party. Aki Pav, we were all crowded around Nami map as she talked about something called Reverse Mountain, but as I stated before, maps are nothing but drawings to me, Zoro said. There has got to be a way around that thing, Sanji said. There's not. From what the geezer told me, Usopp asked. How come? Sanji said. It's because it's dangerous, Usopp said. Yeah, but how come? Sanji shouted at him. I told you everything I know. Geez, Nami was going to say something, but Luffy said. Why don't we sail straight into it? Nami was twitching and I moved away to sit next to Zoro, he muttered. Smat move. I nodded. Smart is right. Nami is downright scary when she's angry, Nami yelled. Are you really that clueless? Luffy said. My way sounds funner and it would be fun, just dive right into it, you know, I nodded. That would be cool, Luffy said. First off, we need to stop off at an island. We need meat. Meat? Nami pointed at the map and said. There is a famous island called Lougetown, Luffy echoed her. Luffy asked. Why is it famous? Do they have delicious meat? Zoro said. I'm pretty sure I have heard of it before. It's the city from the beginning to the end, Nami said. It's the town where the king of the pirates Gold D. Roger was born and killed. My eyes widened in amazement and shock. That reminded me of Ace and made me wonder where he is and what's he doing. We haven't seen him in 3 years and I hope to see him soon. But it sounds really cool too, Luffy said. Let's go there. This was the man who had the One Piece. Everything the world had to offer. I have to see where he was born and executed, I nodded and said. I can't wait, and then, I gave Nami a wicked grin and jumped up. I pulled Luffy up and danced around saying, grand line, over and over again. I felt a punch to my head and Nami's voice scream. Grow up, Aki. I grinned and helped my bump on my head. It was worth it. Now to Lougetown and then close to the Grand Line. I can't to see what adventure we'll have next, together as Nakama. I heard yelling outside and I groaned as I rolled over in the hammock. Nami was near me. I could feel the shadow. She shook me. Aki, get up already, I groaned. Never. The shaking stopped and I smirked. Finally, I can be left alone. I felt a grip on the hammock and a big swing, and then I landed on my back on the wooden floor. I glared up at Nami. Really? So mean? She rolled her eyes. Get up already? She walked off and I slowly got up, changing into black pants, a blue t-shirt and my boots that had the pants tucked in. Slowly I walked outside and stood by Nami. I heard Luffy ask. You wanna play tag, Zoro? My eyes widened as I became fully awake. Zoro had blown them off, calling them childish, and Usopp wanted to play. Excited, I jumped down next to them and said. Me too. Usopp told Zoro. He's afraid he'll lose, Zoro growled. That's not the reason, jerk face. Take it back, I grinned. Yep, Usopp's right. Zoro then chased us around. I grinned more as me and Usopp made Zoro looked at us back and forth and he didn't know which one to chase. Usopp was laughing at Zoro and running, but I was just laughing. It reminds me of when Ace was around. Sometimes if I and Luffy tried hard enough we could get him as mad as Zoro, Sanji called. Dinner's ready. We froze. But Zoro tackled me to the ground and I handed on my side with a yelp. He smirked. "Ha, I won." Luffy and Usopp laughed at him. I sat up as he got off me, I said. "I thought kids played tag, Zoro." He answered me by punching me in the head hard and getting up. I whined and held my head as I got up. We ran up to the galley and sat at the table. Licking my lips, I sat next to Luffy and dug in. Nami asked. "What do you think happened to Buggy?" Luffy said. Buggy? I sure he's dead?" I smirked. "Well, he deserved it." Saying those things, Luffy nodded and before Nami could ask what we were talking about, Zoro said. "I wouldn't be so sure. Pirates can be a real stubborn bunch." Zoro came in pulling Usopp by his nose. I snickered as he whined about it. I looked at Luffy and my eyes widened. I bent over my food protecting it from his rubbery hands as he took Usopp's food and then Usopp complained about it. I ate more and even though Sanji freaked me out about his woman thing, he is like the best cook ever. I think I'm in love with food. Oh man, now I sound like Luffy. We finished and went to hang around the deck. I was watching Nami fix her tangerine trees as Luffy said. "Oh, look, a hermit crab." I raised an eyebrow and walked over. It sounded more fun than watching Nami touch trees. Luffy asked. "Did it come from your island?" Nami said. "Probably, or it could have come from Usopp's village. Wouldn't that be really far away?" Usopp said. "If so, that would be amazing. That little guy would travel a long way." My ears twitched when I heard a noise or it sounded more like a yell. Luffy must have heard it too. "Did you hear something?" Usopp and Nami didn't, Sanji yelled out. "Luffy, back to work." Luffy did after whining about it. I walked around and played with Luffy. When he was done, hopped around Nami and annoyed her, earning a couple of hard punches to the head, watched Zoro try to sleep while I kept him awake, being threatened and yelled at to shut up, and watching Usopp shot things from far away with his slingshot. Plus him telling me one of his stories, and getting a little extra food for Sanji, a lot of those creepy hearts involved. By the time all this was done and I ate lunch and dinner, it was night already. Apparently the guys were arguing in their sleep and Nami said. "Figures they would argue in their sleep," I grinned. "Nothing wrong with that," she shrugged and said. "I'm turning in Aki, you coming too?" I shook my head. "Nah, I'll go in later." She nodded and went across from the boys' room to ours and shut the door. I walked over to below the crow's nest and climbed up until I was sitting in it. I smiled softly looking at the night sky. It looked nice, and even though I like playing around, it's nice looking at the sky and stars at night in quietness. Later on I yawned from being up so long and jumped down from the crow's nest. I landed on all fours. Standing up, I walked into the woman's quarters and lay on the pillow in my hammock, and after covering myself with the blanket, I fell asleep snoring a little. I woke up to see Nami already up. Grabbing my clothes and getting in the small shower, I did what I had to do and got dressed. Pulling in my boots, I walked in there to see Zoro sneezing. "Is he sick?" I heard Luffy say. "What do you think? If you're out here all night, you'd get sick." Luffy was sitting on the ramhead, which he now calls his seat. Zoro was lying on the deck near him. Zoro said. "No, I never been sick," Luffy said. "Me neither, I haven't been sick ever either. I wonder what it's like." Makino said it does not feel good at all, and I see enough of Shanks on his hangovers, so I guess I'm lucky. Zoro said as I sat on the floor under the ramhead. "You know that saying," Luffy said, crossing his arms. "I don't believe that." I shrugged. It could be right. I smacked my head against the wall of the boat when there was an explosion. I heard Usopp yell and snorted. It is one of Usopp's experiments that he has been doing. I just lay around all day and I heard Zoro say, "Hey, Luffy, I see an island." I looked up with a blink and sat next to Luffy as we swung himself on the rail. Nami, Usopp and Sanji joined us. Then they started talking about Loungetown. Zoro wanted new swords. Sanji wanted more supplies and Usopp wanted to look at some stuff. "This is it, the town Gold D. Roger was born and executed," I smiled and muttered. "Yeah, you hear about someone all your life and it makes you want to see where they're from," I heard Nami say. "So, you did remember," Luffy said. "Where the king of the pirates met his fate. This city is known to be the beginning to the end," I smirked. "Can't wait." I just stared out until we would arrive at Loungetown. One step closer to the Grand Line. We stopped at the island and got off. I grinned and jumped off the boat with Luffy. We all walked off and Luffy and Usopp ran off. Nami said she went to look for some clothes and Zoro went to look for swords. Sanji said something about a lot of ladies. I have some money. I guess I will look around. I put my hands in my pockets and whistled looking at the stuff. There was this store that was shaded and I thought it looked interesting. I opened the door and a little bell chimed. Grinning, I walked in and saw an old lady behind the counter. I grinned and said, "Hi." She nodded and said, "Hello." I looked around and there was a weird compass that looked like a watch. Frowning, I picked it up and held it as I looked around. I saw this really cool thing and my eyes widened in awe. It was an electric blue cape with white trim. I picked it up and it was a rough material. I had a hood and stopped at my thighs. I went to the counter and put my 2 items there, she said. Ah, okay. 500 berries. I just had 550. I was lucky. Paying for it, I pocketed the watch and clasped the cape over my neck. Pulling the hood over my head so it was covered, I walked back out. I walked down this main street and was surprised to see Luffy. I saw the platform and grinned. "Oi, Luffy," he looked at me and grinned. I ran over to him and flicked my hood off, I muttered. "There it is." There was a crowd around and Luffy said with a grin to me. "I'm going up," I snorted and said. "Sure, I'll come." We both climbed up on either side of the base thingy. I had to hook my elbows on the rungs so I didn't fall off. After all, who wants to start all over again? We were only about halfway up when people started yelling at us to get off because it was government property and all that. I got annoyed and said with an eye roll, "But I hate the government, so it's okay." I stuck my tongue out and then screamed in shock at my actions and words. I laughed loudly. I heard Luffy laughing too. Soon, we were stopped by another person. I was greatly annoyed at this. He just let us climb the platform and see where the king of the pirates was killed in peace. I turned my head to see a big man in a marine coat and slicked back silver hair and 2 cigars in his mouth. He called to us. "What are you two doing?" Luffy said back. "We are climbing the platform." Luffy then told him he was going to see where the pirate king died and that he was going to leave to be the next one. The guy was shocked and then he said, "To leave you will have to get past me." Luffy tilted his head. "That's it, okay." He launched himself at him, but missed and fell. He tried punching him again, but I was shocked to see Luffy go right through him like a ghost. My eyes widened with a grin and I attacked shout. "I'll get you, ghost." I growled in frustration when he kicked me away. I landed on my back with a grunt. After a few more tries, he flung Luffy away high somewhere. I growled, "How dare he throw Luffy?" I ran at him, claws extended, and I went through him again. No matter what I did, I could not land a hit already. He blew more smoke and said in an annoyed voice, "Could you stop?" I growled again and swiped him, but crashed to the ground. He then kicked me and I too went flying. I landed on all fours so I was not killed by the drop. I stood up annoyed and walked around. Stupid bastard, betting me up like that. I'll get that dumb ghost, though I wondered why the hell he was smoking. I was bored and had nothing to do. Making sure my goggles were still on my forehead, I whistled as I looked around. People were running around and I saw a couple of people in cloaks. They looked mysterious, but it didn't think they had anything to do with me or the crew, so I ignored it. "Man, where is Luffy?" "Zoro must be lost." "Nami is looking at clothes." Usopp said he wanted to look at gadgets or something like that. Sanji was being weird with women. There was this square town thingy and I saw Luffy and Zoro. I ran over to them and said, "Hey Luffy. You're here." He grinned. "Hey Aki, Zoro has a cursed sword." I looked at them and shrugged. "That's cool. I didn't think they would sell them." He shrugged with a smirk. He just wanted to get rid of him. Then this guy beat up a bunch of pirates that should not be named pirates for how lame they were. Luffy was amazed. "Cool, look at him," Zoro said. "That must be Daddy, a bounty hunter." I snorted. "That doesn't sound scary at all." "Oh look, Daddy is here." Luffy grinned and Zoro gave a snort, but didn't reply. The daddy guy left and I was bored again. Luffy suddenly said, "Aki, Zoro, let's get something to eat." I looked at Zoro and he shrugged. All 3 of us walked to a restaurant with 2 forks on the top crossing, though I had to pull Zoro from going the wrong way, which annoyed him. He snapped, "I know where I'm going." I grinned at him. "Sure you do," but we got there and sat at a table. We ordered our food, Luffy asking for everything on the menu, and I ordered something a little smaller, and Zoro got something with sake. We were waiting as Luffy whined. I was flipped my hood on and off of my head and sighing bored. Luffy said, "Aki, I didn't know you got a cape." I nodded with a grin. "It's cool, right?" He grinned and agreed with me, but then the food came. Luffy scarfed down his while me and Zoro ate, keeping our arms around the plates to keep from Luffy's reach. After eating everything, I was a little bulged and leaned back with a groan. Luffy was way bigger than me and he said, "Man, I'm stuffed. Louchtown might be our last chance for a meal for a while." I nodded, agreeing, and Zoro was drinking the last of his sake. Luffy said, "I was starving." I nodded. "Yeah, me too," Zoro said. "Yeah, good thing I ran into both of you," Luffy said. "I don't have any money." Zoro's eyes widened and he looked at me. I snorted. "I have 50 berries," Zoro said. "You don't?" Luffy asked. "Are you sure you don't?" I asked. "Why did you trust us to give you money? Nami wouldn't give it to us?" He glared at me as Luffy laughed, saying, "Then we won't pay. Maybe we can run for it." Ace loved to do that, as I could see. Suddenly a bag fell on Luffy's head and I saw a coin fall out. "Really? Is our luck so good?" We paid and left, thanking the guy in the cloak. I guess these people are not so bad after all. They just looked weird to me at first. The three have walked out the place. Suddenly, a wind blew and Luffy's hat flew in the air. I jumped in SHCO. "Ah, your hat," he yelled. "Ah, my hat?" He ran after it and I followed. I ran a little faster using my devil fruit. I went through an alleyway and grabbed it before it could move again. I put it on Luffy's head when he stopped next to me. He grinned. "Thanks, Aki," I said. "No problem." We looked to see the execution platform and I chuckled. "It's funny how we came back here, isn't it?" Luffy said. "I found it." I nodded. "You want to climb it again?" He nodded. "Yeah." We walked up to it and Luffy started climbing. I frowned. Why'd I have a weird feeling? I shrugged and climbed with him. Soon enough, we landed at the top and I was awed at the sight. Luffy was too. I said after a minute. "Hey Luffy, I going to go down and look around again. Have fun up here." He nodded with a grin. "Go do that, Aki." I stood up and jumped down, landing crouched on all fours, only managing to hurt my legs and arms a little this time. When I was younger, I tried this on smaller heights and used to get hurt. It would be my training. I remember this one time. Flashback: I was hanging around Ace and Luffy for a couple of years now, and me and Luffy were 11 and Ace was 14. Ace and Luffy were training and I wanted to, but I was training something else on my own since I didn't want to hurt them, my devil fruit powers. I was good at climbing trees because I did it so much, and I thought that since dogs could jump from high distances, I could too. So that is what got me into a tree that was tall and about 6 feet high. I took a deep breath and said, "Here I go." I stiffened my shoulders and with a small yell, I jumped down on all fours. All my limbs pointed out. I landed and my right hand took the force of the fall and my body rolled from my shoulder, but then a crack sounded from my wrist to my mid-lower arm. I was on my back and screamed, pulling it tightly to my chest. I winced in pain and screwed my eyes shut. What am I going to do now? Luffy would be worried and Ace will just mock me for getting hurt like this. I just know it. My arm is broken. It must be broken. It hurts too much not to be. I laid on my back breathing heavy and then wincing when my chest moved with my arm. I slowly got up and was standing, my back hunched over. I bit my lip as tears came down my face at the pain. I couldn't wipe them away and hated them. I heard a crash and a yell. "But Ace, I want to find her." I jumped and bit my lip from crying out. Ace growled. "So what? She annoying and dumb to be around." I felt hurt and pain flare in my chest. I didn't know he hated me this bad. Luffy whined. "What if she's hurt?" I listened for the answer. I took a step forward until Ace said, "So what? It would be her fault." I winced and ignored the pain in my arms. My eyes were wet, but for a different reason. Luffy complained, but they left. I fell against the tree I fell off of and curled into a ball the best I could. It was already night and I was scared to deal with Ace when he wouldn't want to deal with me because I'm injured. The sobs were muffled, but I was hurt by what he said. Even if he was mean, I looked up to him and I at least thought he liked me being around. Like that and these thoughts going through my head, I fell asleep. I woke up to a lot of stomping and cursing. Ace was in front of me and I flinched back remembering what he said before. He scowled before saying, "Dumb brat, get up." I shook my head. "Why are you here?" He sighed deeply. "Luffy asked me to find you." I shifted, but let out a cry of pain. He narrowed his eyes. He crouched down and reached for me. I flinched back and he saw my arm and glared. "What the hell, Aki? What's happened to your arm?" He snorted. "Yeah, I can see that." "How?" I told him what I did and he replied, "Well, that was stupid. Why didn't you tell anyone?" I winced and told him quietly what I heard, stuttering a bit. He sighed and reached under me and lifted me up. I tensed, but he started walking. Soon enough we got to the hut and he set me in a chair. He got a first aid kit and bandaged my arm gently and then put it in a sling. He patted me on the head. "Time to sleep." I nodded and walked with him to the area we sleep at and I mumbled as we laid down. "Hey Ace," he said. "What?" I asked. "Why do you hate me?" It was quiet and he said, "I don't hate you." I frowned. "I think you do," Ace said. "Well, I don't. Okay. I didn't mean it, Aki. Now shut up and go to sleep." I smiled, but did as he said. End flashback. Damn, my memory went pretty depressing, didn't it? That's when Ace started treating me like Luffy. Shaking my head, I grinned. "Well, everything is fine now. No need to think too much in the past." Right now the hood was over my head, so I know I wouldn't be recognized for my bounty. Just as I was looking around, there was a crash and I jumped to see the fountain that was there exploded and there was a lady that was really pretty and had a large club that looked familiar on her shoulder. I tilted my head as my hood was still on my head. I heard a laugh that I know I heard before too. This is all weird. I looked around to see all these people in gray cloaks. "Ha! My awesome blue cloak is way better than their boring lame ones," the pretty lady said. "That was pretty dangerous, you know," the one in front with the cloak people said. "Sorry, but your smooth skin is unharmed, so there is no need for trouble." I frowned. What the hell is this? A beauty contest? "Fairest Alvida." My eyes widened in shock and I said, "No way, the old hag. No way could that fat thing turn into a nice-looking person. I'm not into that beautiful stuff, but damn," Luffy said. "I don't see Alvida," she yelled at him. "Don't be so dense, nitwit, I'm Alvida," I said. "No you're not, Alvida's an old hag." People around me gasped in shock and I frowned. They didn't see her. I and Luffy did. She whipped around and glared. I took my hood off and recognition lit up her face. "I remember you too, you were with him," I nodded. "Grey Diaki here." People then started whispering about my bounty and I grinned. "I'm known." She started telling him about her eating a devil fruit called the smooth no mi, where attacks would glide off her skin and she lost her freckles or something like that being her biggest change and I snorted. I think the weight is and everyone that's seen her would agree. The person that spoke threw off their hood along with everyone else behind him and I frowned. Buggy the clown? Luffy seemed to piss him off with messing up his name and I saw no danger. I sighed bored. Buggy said, "Ever since the day you sent me flying, I've been setting my revenge on you." Then he started telling us a story and then he yelled, "Why am I telling a story?" I smiled, amused. He messed up his name again and pissed him off until he got his name right. People around us then figured out who he was and flipped out, screaming and running around. Suddenly something clanked from above and I looked up to see Luffy in one of those execution blocks with that guy the first forgot the name of, but remembered he was from Buggy's crew. I growled. Buggy started talking about killing Luffy today, here and now as I snarled. Like I would ever let that happen. I looked around for a way to get up there as Luffy tried to get loose. Buggy said, "At least you will die in the same place the king of the pirates did," I barked. "No way." He looked at me and yelled, "Shut up. You also need to die flashily," I glared. "Yeah right, you die first." He started yelling at me and then I was snarling and growling at him. Like a weakling like him could kill Luffy. This went from boring to annoying real fast. Somehow, those pirates were annoying me and when I turned back around to deal with Buggy, he was next to Luffy. I scratched my head and muttered, "How the hell did he get up there?" I ran forward, but pirates were in my way. Actually I was surrounded. I looked up and looked at the clouds with shock and asked, "When did the sky get like that?" A couple of Buggy's pirates said or yelled. "It was like that the whole time," I nodded. "Oh, okay," Buggy said. "Now, Monkey D. Luffy of the Straw Hats will be executed." I growled and yelled up. Over my dead body, bastard, he shouted at me. Wait your turn to die flashily, I yelled back. Shut up with the flashily already, he screamed at me, but I just glared. He went on about killing Luffy, which would never happen, and the pirates started cheering. I glared and punched one in the face. Shut up, they all stared at me as Buggy screamed at Luffy and the guy the first hit went flying, I yelled. Stop cheering, idiots. They moved a little bit away from me as my claws shot out. I gave them a dark grin before turning around and cupping my hands around my mouth. Hey Buggy, he looked down at me. What the hell do you want? I grinned as widely as I could and shouted. Shanks is better than you. Nah, 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 nah. I saw jaws all around me drop as Luffy laughed and Buggy started sputtering angrily. You dare say that, you will die next. He had a red face and I was holding it off at jump. He started talking about last words and then mocking him. I was jumpy, bad had to wait for the right moment. If I jump now, all the pirates could jump on me and it'd be wasted. Luffy yelled. I will be the man who will become the king of the pirates. I grinned proudly. Hell yeah he will. I was about to forget it and just jump on the platform and then I heard a yell. Sanji, Zoro, thank you, they could help me, Zoro said. Luffy you idiot. I guess all that fooling around caught up with you. Aki, why are you standing? I glared. I'm trying, Sanji said. Yeah, you look kinda stupid up there and you left Aki-chan to fight for herself. I growled and said. Sanji, not now, he called back. Yes, Aki-chan. Then the crowd started freaking out about Zoro, most likely from the rumors, and they had a clear passageway. I jumped out of the way as they ran forward and grinned crazily as I stared, slicing people and punching them, as did Zoro and Sanji kicked them. They went down like flies, and if it wasn't for Luffy getting executed, this would have been fun. I was looking worriedly at Luffy as Buggy raised H equals his sword and I swore before just using my shoulders to knock people out of the way. I was in front about to jump on it as Luffy said. Aki, Zoro, Sanji, Usopp, Nami, sorry, but I'm dead. He grinned and my eyes were wide as I yelled. No, the sword came down and I crouched, but lightning struck. I was pushed back a couple of feet and landed on my back with a grunt. My jaw dropped in shock when the whole platform went up in flames. Luffy, where is he? He would never die from a weakling like Buggy. It then started pouring and the thing fell and I could not keep my eyes off of it. Luffy to my shock stood up, looking fine, and picked up his hat from the ground. I put my goggles over my eyes because of the rain as I stood up. I grinned as Luffy came over. He was near me and I smacked him in the back of the head. He whined and asked. Why'd you do that? I glared and walked to Zoro and Sanji. Being stupid, Luffy followed me and grinned when he saw them, Zoro said. It doesn't matter, we have to go, I agreed. All of a sudden, a bunch of Marines started coming and I grinned. Time to kick some Marine ass. I got ready to fight as Sanji said. Here they come. Zoro grabbed Luffy and then grabbed me, Zoro said. We had to go. I pouted as Sanji told Zoro off for manhandling me or something like that, but Zoro said. You can fight Marines another time or we'll never get to the Grand Line. My jaw dropped and Luffy and I said. Then let's run. We ran off past all the Marines and pirates. All these Marines came in front of us and I grinned. I guess I do grinds. I punched and sliced the Marys that got in my way. I even bit a couple, my teeth being tougher than a normal human's. We finally got away from them and were running in every couple of leaps. I kept on sliding and I growled in frustration. I said. Luffy, I'm going to do it. He looked at me and grinned as we ran. Okay. Zoro and Sanji must be confused. I ripped off my cloak and put that weird-ass compass in it and I tossed them to Luffy, which he caught. Running faster than them, I jumped in the air and winced in pain at the stiffness and shifting of my bones. I handed on all fours and kept running. I heard Zoro yell. What the hell, Aki? I can turn into a wolf. My height on all fours reaches to about Zoro's waist. Yeah, I was big. My head reached there and my fur was a deep heavy brown with my blue eyes. Zoro decided to ask later when we were not in such a problem, and when I looked at Sanji he was speechless and Luffy thought it was cool, of course. I ran faster than them, almost darting at full speed. I barked at Luffy loudly and ran ahead. He yelled. Okay, go ahead. I ran toward the ship and heard Zoro ask, yell. You can understand her, but then I was too far gone to hear Luffy's answer. I ran faster than I was and then I smelled something that made me flinch. I narrowed my eyes and saw Usopp. But he was carrying a really big fish and I also saw Nami running with him and a bag of something over her shoulder. There was two people, but then not. One was a lion and the other was the guy with the weird fur on his face. That was when we went to that town with the mayor that had the weird name. I skidded to a stop as did Nami and Usopp. Usopp flung an egg at them and it missed and hit the ground. I blinked. I thought he never misses. He blinded on the rain and I watched with a little surprise when the lion licked up the egg and the fur guy screamed at him. I decided to let everyone know I was here, so I barked loudly. 4 heads turned to look at me. The 3 people had fear on their faces while the lion was curious. I gave a doggy smile and trotted between Usopp and Nami. They froze and I licked Nami's hand to show her I was no harm. She slowly patted my head and my tail wagged. No matter how much I didn't like it, I enjoyed it like a real dog. I heard Usopp mutter. Where the hell did that dog come from? Nami muttered. My life just gets weirder and weirder, the fur guy said. No matter, I can just tame this dog. I growled lowly in my throat as I took a step forward with a glare on my face. I heard him gulp and step back. His actions made me give a doggy smirk. He ran forward though, forgetting his fear. He started talking about beating us and then I tensed when I heard running feet. I turned around and saw a bunch of Marines marching this way with guns. The Marines shot at him, but he dodged. I growled deeply and all the fur on me stuck up and I was snarling with my teeth all out. Nami muttered. It's like it knows who they are, I heard Marines mutter. I don't want to shot a dog, they agreed, but kept their gun on us anyway. Nami and Usopp ran to the boat when they were distracted and the Marines shot at them. I barked once and ran toward the boat too as I dodged bullets easily. I landed on the deck and skid a little, falling on my back with a yip. The boat started rocking and I scrambled to my feet and then just laid down as crashes hit the water and I shivered from getting wet and it got me weak. Nami raised up the sail and the anchor and I growled, what the hell is she doing? We are still waiting on Sanji, Zoro and Luffy. I barked at her and she yelled. Quiet dog. She then had wide eyes as she yelled. What the hell is the dog doing here? Usopp was freaking out and I could not morph because whenever I phase my clothes are gone. She shook her head and yelled. Sanji. I trotted to the railing and put my front paws on it to look. There was Sanji waving to Nami with hearts in his eyes. I shivered. Even as a wolf I find that creepy. Marines started attacking Sanji and he used some really cool kicking moves to beat them, but more kept on coming. Usopp said. I had to do this. Usopp then jumped into the water. I started barking endlessly. I can't go in there. Usopp started shooting them with his slingshot and Sanji was kicking other Marines away. I was still barking, not being able to do anything else. I stopped suddenly when there was this green light and a large wing blew. Usopp and Sanji were flung somewhere and I clapped my teeth on a pole. Nami was going to be blown away and I leapt at her and she squeaked in fear. I put my teeth at the tail of her shirt and yanked my head back. We both fell on the deck and I yelped loudly when she crashed on top of me. The green air disappeared and it was raining again. Nami got up and smiled at me. She patted my head and then had a shocked look as she ran back to the railing. She yelled. Help me! Luffy then did his slingshot and flung himself and Sanji, Zoro and Usopp on the sail and they hit the deck. I let out a bark of laughter. Nami sighed and smacked her palm to her face. Nami looked down at me and said. Come on, where's Aki? Luffy laughed and Zoro chuckled and Sanji had an understanding look on his face. I gave Luffy a nod and went in the girls' cabin. I morphed back and changed into a pair of pants, boots and a t-shirt. Shaking my head because it was raining, I walked out with a grin. I said. Hey, guys, Nami rounded on me. Where have you been? I said bluntly. I was the wolf. Nami and Usopp looked at me in shock. What? I said. It's part of my Inu devil fruit. I can turn into a big wolf. Nami came up to me and suddenly punched me in the head. I yelped and covered the new bump on my head as Nami yelled. Let us know next time. Luffy laughed and Zoro shook his head and Sanji was lost at what to say since we were both females. Usopp sighed and looked at me with pity at the wrath of Nami. We were sailing for a while and Luffy was telling me what happened with Smoker with a pout. I asked. I wonder who that other guy was, he shrugged. I don't know. He then got up and sat on the railing crisscrossed next to Nami and Sanji. Usopp for some reason was hugging a pole and Zoro was watching while I was standing near him, Nami said. It's a lighthouse, one of the entrances to the Grand Line. My eyes widened in excitement and I ran over to them, Luffy said. The Grand Line is out there someplace ahead. I smiled in agreement and Nami asked. What now? Usopp asked. Do we really have to go in a freaking hurricane? I called back. Yeah, he yelled. Stop being insane, Aki. I just grinned as an answer. He has been looking at me weirdly since he knew what I could do, but I ignored it. He'll get over it. I grinned as Luffy and Nami laughed. I heard Sanji say. I think we should mark something for the occasion. I looked at him confused. Sanji went into the galley and came back with a barrel. He resting his ode on it and said. I'm going into the Grand Line to find the all blue. Luffy went next. I'm going to be king of the pirates, then Zoro went. The world's best swordsman. Then went Nami. I'm going to draw a map of the entire world, Usopp said. I'm going to be a brave warrior of the sea. I walked up and smiled at even one of my nakama. I lifted my leg up and placed it on the empty space on the barrel, I said. I'm going to the Grand Line to have my name known all over the world. We each grinned at each other and lifted our legs in the air. We smashed the barrel and my mouth hurt from smiling, but I didn't care. Luffy looked at Sanji. Sanji meat. I snorted, but was a little hungry. Sanji rolled his eye and went in the kitchen. Zoro went to lean against the wall and close his eyes and Nami and Usopp went off somewhere on the ship and Luffy went into the kitchen. I walked to the railing and looked out at sea with a faraway look. Finally to the Grand Line. I wonder how Dayton, the bandits and Makino are doing along with that grumpy mayor. Or Ace with him being a pirate and all. I turned around bored and looked to see Zoro sleeping. I saw Usopp and told him. Come here, he asked when he got to me. What Aki? I said with a smirk. You want to wake up Zoro? His eyes widened. Do you want to die? I shrugged. I know you wanna, he sighed. Fine, but you are taking the blame, I grinned at him and said. Fine by me. We crept to Zoro and jumped on him. He let out a yell and glared at us. Usopp squeaked and said. Aki's idea. He glared at me as I thought maybe this was not such a good idea after all. He started getting up and I ran off with him following me until Nami stopped us with a hard punch to the head each saying to be quiet and stop being loud. After gaining a second bump on the head from Zoro, he walked off and I walked off with tears in my eyes from the bump in my head, but could not be any happier.